Greetings, and welcome to another edition of Lessons with Odin Writes Shit. I didn't really know where to fit this technique in, and it's not really a full-blown lesson. But I had this idea. It's basically a tip. And I had this idea because I do a lot of pen pals, or I have a lot of pen pals, and I kind of wanted to put something extra special in there with my letter writing peoples, but I'm often kind of worried about it being too, like, my skills are jewelry making, so the only techniques that I have really are making jewelry, and a lot of the times the jewelry is, like, sticking out of the envelope, so I have to put it in a package instead of a regular envelope, and this gets kind of difficult with my international pen pals because the shipping gets really expensive for the lightest thing ever. So I kind of designed something that fits around a flat envelope. This is a simple bracelet, and I got this idea because a lot of my pen pals tie ribbon around their letters, so I figured why not a simple skinny bracelet made out of herringbone stitch. And all I did was I put a lobster clasp on there, which is fairly flat, but if you're still worried about it sticking out of the letter or busting holes in the letter as it gets handled or sorted, you could put a piece of paper or cardstock over it, and it should still fit in the envelope. So this technique is particularly great because they get to have a little something extra to take around with them, and you can even make it in a bunch of colors to send in different letters, so they always have something to collect or something with each outfit, or you know, just, it's an extra little special touch that I am really kind of pleased with myself that I thought of. So, really super fast to whip together. It takes me about a half hour to 45 minutes, or 2 hours if I have Tumblr in front of me. And, yeah, it's just basically one strand of herringbone, which I will go over for those of you who have never done this before. And basically the flattest clasp that you can find. But again, it's just another one of those little special things to add into your letters, especially if you're not exactly at the package sending stage yet. You're still at the letter sending stage, but you want to send something a little different. And this works with any kind of flat techniques like POD, or you could even do right angle weave with seed beads and stuff. So, but anyway, that is my little tip. If you guys want to learn how to actually do this, keep watching. For this project, you will need some seed beads. I personally like delicas because of the flatness and uniform shape of them, and the way they sit on projects, but you can use any bead that you have on hand. And then you will need either another set of seed beads and half of a clasp, or a full clasp. The flatter the better, because of the envelope and the mailing system. But a simple lobster claw should be okay, but once again, if you're still concerned about it being lost in the mail or ripping open the envelope, go ahead and put another sheet of cardstock in with the letter, and that should protect it. And, of course, a needle and thread. You are going to need about a wingspan of thread, or a little more, because you're going to try and make it so that you don't have to add thread onto it. You can technically add thread to this, but it's so thin and delicate that you'll definitely be able to tell where the joint has been and where you've added more thread. Alright, so we're going to start this with a basic ladder stitch, but it's going to be a very short ladder stitch. So I'm going to string on 2 of my seed beads, pull it all the way down to leaving about a 6 to 10 inch tail, because we are actually going to use the tail this time. So I have my 2 seed beads here. Then I'm going to pass my needle back up through the first seed bead. Like that. And pull it around so that the second seed bead sits next to it. Now from here, I'm going to do just my regular old herringbone stitch. I'm going to add on 2 beads. Then currently my thread is coming out of the left side, so I'm going to pass it down towards the right side of the column, and it just adds the 2 on top of it. To set up for the next stitch, all we're going to do is pass up through 2 columns. Do it again. We're going to add on 2 seed beads. And our thread's coming out the left side, so we're just going to pass through only the top most bead on the right. Pull it down, and we have another column on top of that. To set up for the next stitch, we're just going to pass through the topmost 2 columns on the left side. And we're right back to where we started. Now we have 3 columns. Once more, I'm going to add on 2 beads. My thread is coming out of the left, so I'm going to pass through the topmost bead on the right, and only the topmost bead. Then we have our next column, and once again, to set up for the next stitch, we're only going to pass through the topmost 2 beads of the column. Like that. And that is basically it. You keep on going like that until you have the desired length. Now, in terms of length, it might be a little bit hard to judge. A 7.5 inch is about average, and it actually fits around the letter perfectly. But if you're not too sure about the wrist size, I would add a chain extender to one end of your clasp so that they can, obviously pick how big they want it. But so keep going, doing the herringbone stitch all the way until you have the length of the wrist size that you want minus the clasp length. So basically mine is about a 3/4 of an inch. So I did 7.5 plus the length of the clasp so that people aren't straining on their wrist in order to get the clasp situated. You may start to notice that it curves to one side, and this happens because one column of beads has more threads going through it than the other column. And you can see this better in transparent seed beads. You'll notice that the one on the right seems to be blacker or thicker. That's because more threads have run through it. This isn't really a big deal. It does end up straightening out a little bit when you finish the piece, but if it really, really concerns you, just run your thread all the way down through the other side after you have finished putting on your clasp. And speaking of putting your clasp on, once you have the length that you want, I like to put another set of seed beads on. I'm just going to make a loop for my lobster clasp instead of using a jump ring or something. So from here, I like to use size 15s as well, just because it's smaller and it's easier to get the lobster clasp through. So I'm just going to add a random number of beads. 16 is usually pretty good for the loops that I usually use, but I'm going to add everything that I want to add. Those are my beads here, and pull those off my needle. And since my thread is coming out of the left side, I'm going to pass through 2 or 3 beads on the right side. That, pull all the way down, and my loop is formed. Now I kind of want to reinforce it, so all I'm going to do is pass up through the left side 3 beads, like that, and continue on through my loop of small seed beads here. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm through a couple of the gold seed beads, and I'm just going to pass through the rest of them. And I can also continue on to the next delicate bead on the bottom, or the black beads, or the main bracelet beads, whatever you're using. Now if I'm feeling ambitious, I'll do it again by passing up through the left side and keep going over or around the seed beads once more, but I'm not feeling up to it today. So I'm just going to pass through a couple more beads on the right side. Then what I'm going to do is take the thread that is in between the two columns and make a half hitch knot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and pass it underneath the thread that is in between the two columns. I'm going to pull through until my thread forms a little loop. I'm going to pass my needle through the loop and pull tight to form my knot. Like that. Then I'm going to pass through some beads on the left side at the same level. So if you can see, my knot is right here. My knot is right here, so I have started threading beads down here, right next to it. Next, I'm going to do another half hitch knot in between the columns again, and then pass downwards through the right side instead. I'll basically do this for about 3 or 4 more knots, and then I will end my thread just by cutting it. Doing the other side is pretty much the same. I'm going to thread my needle through the tail end of my work, and then what I'm going to do is add on 1 seed bead, the clasp of my project, and 1 seed bead, and do the same exact thing. My thread is coming out of the left, so I'm just going to pass down the right a couple of beads. Like that. I'm going down 4 beads here. Pull that all the way through. I've got my clasp attached, but I want to reinforce it, so I'm going to go back up through 4 beads, like that. Then pass through the seed bead, the clasp, and the other seed bead next to it. Then continue on through the main bracelet once more to reinforce. Knot it exactly the same way that you did on the other side, and your piece should be complete. And that is about it. That is how you make these little adorable, dainty letter wraps. If you need some more help with the herringbone, I'll leave a couple of links with more tutorials down below, and of course if you enjoy some of the writing things and calligraphy work, I've got some fountain pen reviews on Wednesdays. But yeah, that's about it that I got for you guys, and of course, if there is anything that I need to be trying out right now, feel free to leave me a comment down below, and I will see you next time. One column has more threads coming through it than... Hi, cat.